Good morning and welcome to our channel. Today I'm going to be discussing what happens during a Section 8 housing inspection, better known as HQS or Housing Quality Inspection, and also the newer rules that are rolling out starting in 2026 and going forward, which will be NSPIRE or NSPIRE. But before I do that, let me bring up some company information for those of you that might need a little bit of assistance with this. So here we go. All right, I've got my company information up. You can see your phone number, website, and email address here. My office is by appointment only, and our services are very inexpensive. So, if you're having trouble with your housing quality inspection, whether you're a tenant or a Section 8 landlord, I would advise reaching out to my office or another qualified professional in the field. I've served at the federal level for about 26 years and I serve probably between two to 300 landlords a year, and not to mention another 20,000 tenants that need help through, over a quarter of a century. Anyways, let's bring in some notes here for you guys. I prepared this, especially for those that can't keep pace or otherwise have learning disabilities. So, what happens during the inspection? So, the Section 8 housing inspection determines when a rental unit is safe, sanitary, functional, and eligible for the Housing Choice Voucher Assistance Program. The inspection is normally performed by the local public housing authority, better known as a PHA, or a contractor working with it, but not directly through HUD. All right. So, we're going to move in some updates real quick. It's important to understand in 2026 that HQS versus the NSPIRE, NSPIRE, Section 8 inspections are currently in transit period. That means that under HUD's notice PIH 2026 through the 18th, housing authorities may continue to use traditional housing quality standards, but HQS through January 31st of 2027 will fall into full compliance with the newer national standards of physical inspection real estate. So that's Inspire and is required starting, I believe, February 1st, 2027. So just keep that in mind. I will, for those, again, you can look up these notes in the bottom of the description of this video, as well as the comment section. So, all right, let's go on to the next part here. What happens during the inspection? The housing authority may inspect a unit several different times, but typically just once. And a lot of them, you may find that there may be a wait between a 1 week and up to a month, or a little bit longer if you're in a larger metropolitan area like Los Angeles or New York, where there's a lot of requests for this. So when does the inspection happen? The initial inspection after the voucher holder finds a property that hands over the request for tenancy gets approved. The landlord generally submits the request for tenancy approval. The housing authority then schedules the inspection. The unit must pass inspection before the housing authority can approve the tenancy and begin regular housing assistance payments. This is subject to any limit exception allowed under federal rules or local policy. And as you can see, there are a few things on the line here. The housing authority must also determine whether the requested rent is reasonable, the unit is the correct size for the household, the lease complies with the program requirements, and that the landlord is eligible to participate. And in most circumstances, that should be the case. So we're going to move down a little bit here. Also, utilities and appliances are assigned correctly between the tenant and landlord. And so you have to figure out whether or not utilities are included or not included, and that will definitely bring you to a different determination of rent depending on which it is going to be. So for the regular inspection, once the family moves in, the housing authority periodically inspects the property. Generally, that usually never really happens, to be honest, but federal rules generally permit inspections at least biannually, although the housing authority may inspect units more frequently under its local policies. And again, you'd be lucky if they do this every couple of years. They simply don't have the time or staffing to do so. Number three, complaints or special inspection. The tenant, landlord, or government agency or other party may report serious conditions. The housing authority may conduct a special inspection focusing on the reported problem or inspect the entire unit. Again, that's kind of rare, but those examples may include heat, electricity, plumbing, sewage problems, exposed electrical wiring, water breaks, structural damage, broken locks and doors, missing smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, mold, pets, and other health concerns, and landlord's failure to complete repairs. That usually ends up being a rather contentious subject matter, and often it ends up with tenants usually calling me, or a landlord may have a tenant that's tends to be more problematic reporting every tiny issue. So I've seen both sides of that argument. Number four, the quality inspection. The housing authority may re-inspect a sample of the units to evaluate whether its inspectors are applying the standards correctly. Rarely, if ever happens, a housing quality inspection does not necessarily mean that the tenant or landlord did anything wrong. Again, very rare they do this. So what should happen before the inspection arrives? This is what you're going to want to pay attention to. All utilities should be connected and operating if you're offering all utilities included. The inspector must be able to enter every room and area required. In other words, you cannot quarantine specific parts of the property off without and deny access. Okay, electrical panels, windows, appliances, heating equipment, water heaters, and alarms should be accessible. Pets should be secured. Tenants should report problems honestly and report out conditions that the inspector might not immediately notice. The landlord should complete the known repairs before the appointment, and an authorized adult should be abatable if required by the housing authority. And abatability there, it's really smart that both tenant and landlord be there and that all parties be over 18, okay? The person attending should not attempt to hide defects, disconnect equipment, block access, or pressure the inspector. So anyways, as we move on, what does the inspector examine? Well, here's a little list here. Smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms where required, electrical outlets, switches, exposed damaging wiring, missing and electrical panel covers, overload or unsafe electrical connections, fire exits, escape routes, flammable materials, and any equipment near any equipment that heats up, which would be near heated equipment. So moving on from there, federal smoke alarm requirements generally call for all hardwired alarm systems and sealed 10-year battery alarms in covered federally assisted housing. Local building and fire codes may also impose additional requirements. Keep in mind, these are for larger properties, okay? The inspector may examine the hot and cold running water, toilet sinks, tubs, and showers, water leaks, drainage, sewer backups, water heater condition, unsafe water temperatures, evidence of serious moisture damage, small cosmetic stains, but may not necessarily cause a failure, but an inactive leak, unsafe plumbing, or major moisture problem. One thing I'm going to remind you before we continue on this list here, guys, most of the housing authority employees that do inspections, they only look for the nitpicky things, little small things. They're not going to go in there like a full inspection as if you just purchased a property and then you have the underwriter requires a complete inspection of the property. Most times it's just a Mickey Mouse list of things. They'll often go after simple things like a gap in a door, missing screens, or if the outlets don't have a faceplate, they're not really going to, in most cases, spend a lot of time with this. So if it usually passes a visual inspection, you should be okay. But however, sometimes PHAs have new employees that want to be Joan of Arc, and so when you get one of those, you're going to end up spending a few dollars to change a few things. All right, moving on from heating, ventilation, and cooling. Inspector may check whether the unit has had adequate and permanent heating source, whether the heating system operates safely, gas or combustion hazards, proper ventilation, unsafe space heaters, blocking or blocked vents, cooling equipment, if the landlord is providing locally is locally required to do so. A unit that is not guaranteed to pass merely because the portable heaters are available. So you go on to structure and safety and security. I'm going to try to scroll down a little bit more here for you guys so you can keep track with me. The inspector may examine exterior doors and locks, windows, flooring, ceiling, walls, stairways, railing, porches, roofs, foundation problems visible during the inspection, broken glass, trip and fall hazards, emergency exits, and address numbers that the emergent responders can see. In the kitchen, they may look at unsafe unusable food preparation area, working stove, range, and other approved cookware appliances, a working refrigerator, safe electrical service, or running water, leaks, sanitary conditions, and serious pet activity. They're very serious about if there's any infestation, at least initially. However, as you get further into this, as a tenant leases, you may find they're not as quite practical on that part. So we're going to move on to bedrooms. The bedroom should normally have a working toilet if it has a bathroom included for that bathroom, a bathroom included in the bedroom, a sink. Sorry, for the bathroom needs a working toilet, sink, bathtub, shower, hot and cold water, adequate privacy, proper drainage, safe and electrical fixtures, appropriate ventilation, and for bedroom and living areas, you go into lighting, electrical service, windows, emergency escape, floor, wall, and ceiling conditions that are approved, door and privacy infestation or sanitation hazards. They will perform a lead-based paint risk assessment there in some cases, and whether the space is suitable for residents. The lead-based paint is going to be for properties that probably predate 60s and 70s, so it will be contentious depending on how old the property is. The den and basement, attic, or converted rooms is not automatically considered an approved bedroom merely because someone sleeps there, but also keep in mind certain states consider other livable spaces, including the living room, like California. Depending on the type of property and the inspection, the inspector may examine the stairs, handrails, walkways, elevators, parking access, trash accumulation, common hallways, building entrances, uh, infestation, structural hazards, exposed utilities, and site drainage. Look, nobody's got that kind of time, guys. If they do it, it's going to be fleeting as they're walking right on through. They're not going to go through all that. They don't have all day to sit there and have tea and crumpets with you. Okay, they're going to pass through, and if everything looks reasonable, then that's usually what's going to happen. Common reasons for unit fails: missing or non-working smoke alarms, missing required carbon monoxide alarms, exposed electrical wiring, broken outlets and switches, no utilities, no hot water, plumbing leaks, inoperable toilet, unsafe heating system, broken windows, doors, and locks, and missing handrails. You have trip hazards, active infestation, water damage, deteriorated paint, and locked emergency exits, appliances that do not work, and a failure to be able to access certain areas. So you can see the reasons that most things fail are for the very minor issues, not all the other stuff they say they're going to actually inspect. Moving on from there, what happens after the inspection? When the unit passes, if this is an initial inspection, the housing authority may proceed with the rent reasonableness, the lease approval, and execution of housing assistance payment contract, which is a HAP contract. That is agreement between you, thus the landlord, the tenant, and also HUD to ensure that everybody is following what federal requirements are required in order to participate, whether a tenant or a landlord. If the unit fails, repairs are permitted, then the housing authority provides a list of deficiencies, identifies whether the landlord or tenant is responsible, and those responsible parties must correct problems within the required time frame that they're going to indicate. The housing authority may conduct in-person reinspection, accept photographs, invoice, certifications, and other verifications, use remote inspection procedure if authorized, and require an independent inspection or repair record. In most cases, they're just going to do a self-certification. In other words, we're all going to be working on a trust factor here. Like during the pandemic, they're going to ask if you made the necessary changes with probably a little indecision to that, and then probably approve you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm gonna put the rest of the notes down there. I don't feel that it's necessary to go through every inch of this for you guys because obviously we wanted to warm you up to what would happen as a basic way to do this for you guys. If you're wanting a complete list of HUD requirements and so on, you might want to reach out to my office for that. If you've had problems with failure of inspection or other questions there, you might want to book an appointment with our office. I'd be happy to help you. I've probably got more experience than almost any other consultant in the nation when it comes to this. So that being said, I'm going to check the time real quick, see where we are. And it looks like we are just about done for this video at about 13 minutes. So join us again. We do educational videos generally once to twice a day, almost 7 days a week. And then we have a few lives on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays if you have questions there. No cost for that. And we have more than 2,000 videos available to help both landlord and tenants navigate the system and do that with relative ease. Thank you for joining us today and hope to see you guys again. Remember to subscribe.